Good morning, a good nerve Shabbos, holding Shabbos Parshat Midbar. My name is Baruch in the game Shavuos, Chag Shavuos. So everybody should have a good Shabbos and a good Yom Tov coming up. We are going to discuss the halacha in today's Rambam as we move into Hilchos Nachalos. And the Rambam in Hilchos Nachalos, Perek Beis, halacha Aleph writes that a bechor takes double portion, Neitel Pishnayim, Nichsei Aviv, and his father's properties and possessions. Shenema Losas Le Pishnayim. It says to give him twice the amount, a double portion. In Halacha Beis, he writes an interesting halacha. Bechor that's born after his father passes away does not get twice. Doesn't take that twice. And the reason, he gives a pasuk. V'hoye b'yayim hanchiloi es banav ki es bechor ben asnua yakir. Doesn't explain why, what it says there. We'll see soon. The Gemara explains it a little better than the Rambam does. Finally, halacha tes, he tells us what's a bechor. Bechor l'nachlo, bechor which is relevant to inheritance. Hu nanoilid la'av rishon shenamar ki hu reishis ein. If I get a chance, I would like to discuss this part at the end, but it's a side point. Very interesting discussion that's brought down in the Pesachim, but we'll leave that for now. So this halacha that a bechor gets pishnayim is a very, very important halacha, to the point that in tomorrow's Shir Rambam, tomorrow or the next day, I think Sunday maybe, talks about that it's forbidden to circumvent this and say that my son, the bechor, does not get pishnayim. Lav, for a lav, levaker. It doesn't have any validity. And so on and so forth. Can't do it. L'yuchal, levaker is ben ha'uval pnei ben asnu. And it says, "Yes, bechor ben asnu yakir." And just reading the psukim, this yakir. Okay, we learn out things for this yakir, but what is that supposed to mean? So we'll come to that. There is a Yad Rama in Mesechtes Bava Basra Daf Kuf Chavav on the base asks a question. If it's usher to move Nachlo from a bechor who's pishnayim to someone else, how did Yaakov Avinu take away the bechor portion from Reuven and give it to Yosef? Okay, Reuven Shimon Yuli, he got double portion. That's what he got, and it was a Yerusha. And how did he do that? And he answers. It's a very big question. I mean, it's a question that we all should ask. But, we don't think so much about these things. And he answered, this was Kedem Matan Torah. And my Matan Torah is different. It's the Torah Neschat Shaloch, it's an expression of the Gemara. And then he brings a raya from another issue. That's even a bigger problem that we should be asking. We know that Yaakov bought the bechor from Eisav. How was he able to buy the bechor from Eisav? It's a davar shalei b'leilim. Bechor is a davar shalei b'leilim. His father's alive. So how did he manage to do this? So what you have to answer, the Kedem Matan Torah is different. The also Kedem Matan Torah is different. So basically there are two issues that he raises, two very fundamental issues in Klal Yisrael, in our history, in our setup And he comes up with an answer. The problem with this thing is it's a good answer, and it's definitely a good answer. I mean, the Rambam says the answer. It's an answer. But it's a chiddush to say that our Avis, who were Mekayim Kol HaTorah Kula, except for the Mekayim Kol HaTorah Kula, yet they weren't Mekayim this. I'm not asking it as a kasha, but it's just interesting. But there are two fundamental issues. How did Yaakov take away the Bechira and from Reuven and give it to Yosef when it's allowed the Torah not to do this? And how did Yaakov buy the Bechira from Eisav when it's Bechira Davar Shlebaleh? These are very two fundamental issues of the Torah. Now, just to bring out a little broader perspective, there are various answers of this question. The answer that the Yad Ramah gave, which is Kaid Matan Torah Shiny, it's different from Matan Torah. There's a beautiful Medrash Rabbah in Parshas Vayechi on the pasuk Koichi V'Reishis Eini. The Medrash Rabbah brings Amar Rav Acha Lo Yishalacha Hisa B'Chayr. The B'Chayr didn't belong to you. Klum Holach Yaakov Eitz Alavim Ela B'Shvil Rachel. Yaakov went to Rachel. The Leah was a mistake. Everything he did, all the work he put in there was for Rachel. And therefore, right now, all I'm doing is returning the B'Chayr to its rightful owner. Achshav Chazar B'Chayr L'Bala. So he's not asking the question, but he's giving an answer. Now, what kind of answer that is, I'm not sure. But what he's basically saying is that, this is the rightful owner because that was the rightful woman that I was supposed to marry. And okay, but who says he'd have kids? Who said that doesn't make her the bottom line is she didn't have kids for years. I mean, what's the issue? As I state in Medrash, I'm quoting the Medrash. Now, Tanchuma brings in Parshas Vayetze, Taich is the whole parsha in Kiseitze of Kisel Yeno Leish Shtei Noshim, all about Yaakov and Leah, and Yaakov, Rachel and Leah, and he writes that's chatting the pasuk. Kisel Yeno Leish Shtei Noshim is a Yaakov, Leah Rachel, Lachas Uv is a Rachel, Lachas Nu is a Leah, and they had children. They each had children. And then he says, so the Medrash Tanchuma said, when he came to leave the world, so there God said, Lo yuchal levakes ben ahuv eliyes. Lama ki az abcher ben asnu Yaakov. Reuven. Shnam Reuven b'chayriyata. That's what it says there. Reuven b'chayriyata. Ava bishama b'zyene pachas kan al teisa. And he goes, and Moshe redeemed them later. So he says, but he gets two portions in some other way. He explains it some spiritual way. So somehow or another, the Tanchuma says that Reuven is still considered taking two portions. Yosef got the two children. Another Medrash says he got HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Moshe. I mean, these are all things I can't explain, but that's what it says. But at the end, this Medrash Bereshis Rapsi says that Loi Mishpat HaBchira, the same exact Kemat Medrash, with a little different twist. And he says, She'ein miyachsim b'chalokim b'bchira el Reuven. The name B'chir always goes to Reuven. What that means, we'll see soon. So that's the answers that exist on the first question. They're not answers that we understand necessarily, but they're answers. Second question, again, we have the Yad Ramah. There's a Chuvas Arivash, Siman Shin Chav Ches. He brings Mishem the Tur. in the name of his father, the Rosh, that if you are makna davar shlei b'la'olam, and you do it with a shvua, then the kinyan is chal. That's a big chiddush, but as I zogt, and he brings a raya from Yaakov and Eisav. That's why Yaakov said he's shavali. The Ktseis in Simon Reish Ayin Ches says it's a davar shalei b'la'olam. You can't sell it, but you can be masalik your schus in it. And he says, then perhaps that's what happened. Yaakov was able to acquire the b'chayim Eisav, even though davar shalei b'la'olam, because Eisav gave up that schus. That you can be masalik yourself from a davar shalei b'la'olam, even though you can't be kaina davar shalei. So how is you can't be makna davar shalei. Once he was masalik it, so then Yaakov was able to take it. Now, the Rechaim HaKadosh, Parshas tell this on this pasuk. There are two Erechaims there, one after another, that are full with niglet and beautiful, beautiful stuff. So he says that what's the diuk michre kayim? The halacha is that if a person is very poor and he's waiting for an inheritance, he's allowed to sell in order to get money. There's another way you can do it. In other words, in dire straits, the Chachamim or Masakin that you can do Kedei Chayav. What you need for your life, you're allowed to sell. So that's the stress here. That Eisav was in dire straits. In Eneiche Eilech Lamos. Poshim Shat Nepasik. I'm not talking Rashi Shat. He's about to die because he's Oyef. He's tired and zonked and totally taken away all his energy. And therefore, he was allowed to sell. And therefore, even though davar shalei b'la'olam, he was allowed to sell. It's a beautiful piece. It's kedai to read. I mean, the gain is there. It's just unbelievable. Okay, so right now we have answers, but I want to suggest another approach, understanding what b'chayr is. We mentioned the halacha, the Rambam, about if a father dies, the son is born afterwards, and he's a b'chayr, does not get pishnayim. The b'chayr of this Gemara is in Bava Basra. We said it because it brings a pasuk kiss b'chayr ben asnu yakir. Gemara Bava Basra says, my time, Yakir Amar Achman. V'halesa di Yakir. There is nobody to be makir here. Not, I said the word Yakir in here is, and the Rambam mentions it a number of times. This creates a big tumult in the place in the Mineh HaMitzvahs. The Ramban in his Hasogis on the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvah says that the Rambam missed the mitzvah. B'chayr ben asnu Yakir. It's a mitzvah. You have to be makir. It's not only a din you're not allowed to take, you have to be makir him. So you forgot that. And then he goes through the other things. Now, Rabbi Moshe Perlstein, who wrote the Beer on the Sefer HaMitzvah Asag, which, by the way, coming up to Shavuos, just to note some of the history of these. The Asag wrote a Sefer HaMitzvahs. If you look at it and you go into your library and you find it, it's 3 massive volumes. But if you just take out the Rasak's part, the Psadi Goin's part of the Sefer HaMitzvahs, it's about 2 pages. It's what we have in many of the Goinim and Rishonim wrote poems of the mitzvahs. Now, there wasn't just a poem; it was a poem with an unbelievable clarity and thought. Now, Rabbi Moshe Perlstein sat down and analyzed that poem and wrote literally 3 massive volumes of scholarly work to explain the Rasak. Now, I don't know that the Rasak wrote it for that reason, but it was very common that they did. They wrote it to be read in the shul on Shavuos, to basically give a synopsis of the Taryag Mitzvahs. So he says, I can't. The fact that the Gemara learns out that your father has to be makir, and if the father is not alive, you can't. There's a simon that it's not a mitzvah say. Otherwise, how do you know that that's maybe just a mitzvah say? And that's his answer. So there's a lot of discussion about this, but nevertheless, there is such a concept. You see, in the Gemara that the father has to be makir, whether it's a mitzvah, whether it's a din, whatever it is. There's also a din of in Hilchas Yisur Bia, Perik Tesvav Aloch Tesvav, says that a father that a father can say on his son that his son is a mamzer. I don't mean when he just says it, to make him feel bad, but when he says it to identify his yichus status. And we learn it out from Yakir Ran Alacher. Then he says the following halacha. So you can say Benizeh Mamzer. I've been Grush Nachalos. That tastes in Kedushin of Ayin Dalet. How does he want to know that? Benizeh B'choyer is a good thing for the child. He takes Mishnayim because of that. How do you know you can pass somebody? What if with the other? This is a financial thing. This is a status that's scarred for life. And he gives answers that it's talking about by saying that my son is a b'chayr, I'm passing others. Perhaps, I think we have to reevaluate this b'chayr pnishayim relationship. And perhaps what the Gemara is telling you that you need a yakir on the b'chayr, and that a father can be makir the b'chayr. Not with money. It's the status. It's a status of a b'chayr. It's a status. B'chayr is a status. This is who he is. The result of that status has a very different, has a bunch of different things that come along with it. You have a status, you get you get certain things, and when there are certain privileges for that status. But that's what it's about. It's about a status. If that's the case, what makes a b'chayr what's the idea of a b'chayr? He is a b'chayr. Period. Because of that, he gets pishnayim. Because of that, certain there was a time when they did avodah. There was a bunch of things. I want to go back to that medrash that we mentioned, that Yosef is never called b'chayr, only Reuven. And there's a medrash Agoda, the Kisaitse, that goes through this same question that we asked originally. He doesn't give the answers that we gave before. He only focuses on this. He asks, so he says, even though I said, even though Yosef gets an extra portion, but similar to what we saw earlier, Reuven is the b'chayr. And that's what he says is pshat, ki as b'chayr ben asnu yakir. That's Reuven. He's been recognized. Never anybody else. Only that in the time when he was angry at him, he said, Reuven b'chayriyat. He was makir ben asnu. So, with what we're saying, it's good. It makes sense. That he never took away the name b'chayr. He was makir him as b'chayr. He took away the results of that. That doesn't take away. If you can separate the name from the results, then it's not a problem. Now, this is the stretch, but it makes sense. Since the Gemara says, "Ilu haYadeya," the Reuven, if that was when he written in the Torah, we'd never do things. The Torah creates the status of people, creates the Metzius. Torah is the blueprint for everything. So if a father is going to say, "I'm going to take away the Pishnayim from my son, but he's going to remain my b'chayr," it means nothing, because practically you don't have that ability to say he's a b'chayr without results, that means not having the results takes away his b'chayr. But Yaakov Avinu in the Torah, giving a name b'chayr in the Torah, and the name b'chayr repeating itself in the Torah, that's a status. Even though the financial parts and the results of the status don't pan out, it doesn't matter. That status is there. And there's a yakir, and there's no problem with because it's not a problem. True, he's losing out, but in Yanka's case, it's not a problem. So that's could be that's what the medrash is saying. I mean, I'm explaining this medrash, but it also gives an answer to the question. And if that's what. So in other words, only by Yaakov, only what's in the Torah could it be said. Beyond that, the not giving him the Bishlan takes away the status. There's no such thing to this guy. Well, who's the miyachis? Here it is the Torah that's miyachis. If that's true, say a big chiddush. That there's a halacha when you sell a davar shalei b'laylam, you can't do that, right? But if I sell dekel lepei Eisav, I could. If I sell a tree for its pears, I can do it, right? That's not a davar shalei b'laylam because I'm selling you the tree for the pears that come from it. In the time of Yaakov and Eisav, the b'chayru wasn't something that's going to be in the Torah, as we said. So since it's a metzias of b'chayra, it has a gather of dekel l'paresa. It's a gather of dekel l'paresa. Now, the Archaim HaKadosh there, the second piece that I mentioned, talks about it's a davar she'ein b'mamish. Yeah, that's today, because I don't have that power to create a status. But at the time when the Torah is writing it and putting it in, that creates a status, and therefore it's not a davar she'ein b'mamish. This is who you are. So it's mamish a gather of dekel l'paresa. He's creating a status which comes the results later. That you can sell. That's not a problem, davar shalei b'laylam. And therefore you're able to do it. I mentioned earlier that I would like to mention a point that just a little story. Maybe people have heard it. The Shaila came up in the city of Vilna, I think it was, in the time of the Gra. And the Shaila was a father, got married, then got married to it. And he divorced his wife. A month later, he married a second woman. And in the end, the second woman gave birth to a child at the 7th month of her pregnancy. His first wife, he didn't know that she was pregnant at the time. She was pregnant, and she gave birth in the 9th month. Now, it's obviously that the first wife conceived before the second wife. And what's the halacha? Who's the b'chayr? Is it the first? The one born from the first one, or the one born from the second one? So, Shiloh was a big Shiloh, big tumult. The Gra, I don't know if he passed him because of the pasuk, said, oh, that's what it says in the Torah. Also in the Bais in the Torah. Kisiyano leish sheinash. Achas ahuva v'achas no. Which is very place. He has 2 women. V'yoldu loibanim ha'ahuva v'hasnu. So he teaches, let's look at the pasuk. What does it mean? Ha'ahuva v'hasnu. Who's there? What? How did the ahuva have the bird? Why is it mentioned first? V'yoldu loibanim. Hasnu of ahuva, according to the story, right? The other one, ahuva. Them shtei leyuchal levakir ben ahuva pnei ben hasnu. So he asked a few questions. This is the first question I asked. Why does it say that the ahuva had a child before the snur? Second, why is there a havamina that yuchal levakir that we possibly has to tell us lo yuchal levakir? I don't think it's strong kasha, but it's a question. So he says, "Das is the Maisa given." The old Reuven, he had 2 wives. First one because of Snu, he divorced her. Right? You know, I divorced only because found something that you should hate her for. The second one is Ahuva. And the Ahuva had a child before the Snua. But the Snua conceived first. It's like Yuchalavakir. Then Ahuva al Pnei Ben Asnua. Because the Ahuva is the Bechir. I was born later, it doesn't matter. It's a beautiful shot in the pasuk, and I'm not a Pesach in this issue, and I don't know what the Pesach over the years, but it's a rare case. I don't know that this case ever happened again. But in the Lashon Rambam, B'chayr l'nachlu ha'noilid la'av rishon, it's hard to put that in because noilid la'av is noilid la'av. That's what you mean. So I don't know. I'm not again. I'm not professing to paskin or to do anything, but it's just an interesting take, an interesting thing. Anyway, I say have a good Shabbos, a good Yom Tov. Should be Kabbalah Satayr, Simcha, Pnimius, Kalosh Marav, and it should be an end. The Yom Tov should bring Simcha to all the Jews throughout the world, and that we should be able to be in a matziv of Didan Natzach in all the areas that we have to, and it should be Atzlocha for everybody. Sei gesund, stark, a good Yom Tov. Shabbos agenda.